Hello and welcome to today's Media Associates International webinar. An AI translation of this webinar is available by clicking on Show Translations and choosing your preferred language. My name is Heather Pubels and I'm the CEO of MAI. We connect and equip global Christian writers, editors, and publishers as they create excellent content that enriches the church and influences society. We had 67 people from 29 countries register for today's webinar. We'd like to welcome our first-time attenders. If you could please click on the raise hand button, we'd love to see who our first-time attenders are. All right, so we have a few. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you here. It's great to see these new attendees. Please remember to put your comments and questions in the chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can during the question and answer time at the end of the presentation. Today's 1-hour webinar is entitled Laying Strong Foundations Now, How to Grow Your Publishing Ministry and Business. Creating a thriving publishing ministry and business is not something that happens by itself. In this webinar, you'll learn how to lay strong foundations so your ministry impact grows over time. Our presenter is Rowan Miller. He is the commercial director for SPCK Group, providing leadership to global sales, rights, marketing, and fundraising. Active since 1698, SPCK is the UK's largest Christian publisher. Prior to SPCK, Rowan worked with HarperCollins and Alpha International. He's based in the UK. I'm going to turn my camera on here for a moment. Rowan, tell us about a project you're currently working on.
Sure. Well, thank you, Heather, and thank you, everybody. It's lovely to see you all. I'm really looking forward to spending this hour with you. And yeah, so a project I'm working on. So I love my job, and I'm really fortunate that I get to think about what might be next, and always trying to just work out where we go next with God's guidance, how we plot the next step forward. And so, particularly at the moment, we're looking at the library market. It's an area where we know there's a large part of the library market's obviously very substantial in many countries. And so it's important to us to be in that space with our life-changing books. So that's a priority for me just at the moment.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Rowan. I'd not thought about the library market, but that makes a lot of sense, that's an important area. Let me just get us back. Rowan, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you back at the Q&A time at the end.
Great. Okay, everybody. Well, I'm just going to give me a second. I'll just get my little screen up. Hopefully, everybody can see this little first screen, which shows two little houses, one that maybe doesn't have such a great foundation and one that does have a strong foundation. So please let me know if you can't see that, and I'll talk through. So it's lovely to be here with you all today. Like I said, I absolutely love what I do. I grew up in Ireland, in the Presbyterian Church in Ireland. That's where my roots are, and very much growing up in that church tradition gave me a real heart and understanding of mission. They rate mission very, very, very highly, and so when I then worked with Holy Trinity Brompton in London, the home of the Alpha Course, and then Alpha International, and then with HarperCollins, now with SPCK, I've been able to take those deep spiritual roots into my work. And, that's an amazing privilege for me. I regard myself as deeply honored to be here and to be with you today. So yeah, the purpose of this time, and I'm just going to spend about 45 minutes. I want to allow a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A. I really want to, I suppose, share what I have experienced along the way and what I have learned. And important to say at the top is that I have learned from failure. I haven't learned because of a textbook. I haven't learned because I'm particularly clever, because I'm certainly not. I have often learned through getting things wrong. Um, and I'm not an expert. I I have a degree, but it's not in publishing. And yet here I am working in publishing. And so really what everything I do is sort of trying to at all times make the best decisions as we go along. In my role, I look after all our revenue departments, so that's sales, marketing, PR, fundraising, rights, all the web sales, everything, all the sort of revenue streams come into me. And I also have the real privilege and pleasure of supporting some of our US partner publishers who we work with in the UK market as well. So it's a role that I take really seriously, and I'm thrilled to do it. So the purpose of this is really about foundation building, and foundations, as you know, as a principle, are super important to anything we do. So firstly, let me just start with this question, the big question: what does it really take to thrive? And what does thriving mean anyway? Because thriving will mean different things to different people. Um, and a few sort of key things are: a strong message doesn't mean a lasting impact. A calling alone doesn't guarantee sustainability. And thriving must be built intentionally. The reality is often very different to what people hope when they get into something. So we often see burnout, we see inconsistent outputs, we see financial pressures, and we see stalled or shrinking impact. And so a publishing ministry doesn't just thrive because the message is good. These things are real. These are real things that people have to deal with day to day. Most publishing ministries don't fail because they lack calling. They struggle because they lack foundations. And what usually happens is this: things start strong, there's passion, there's momentum, there's even some growth. But over time, cracks begin to show: overwork, inconsistency, unclear direction, and financial pressures all start to creep into the day to day. And slowly, that impact that starts to decay. The impact, instead of growth, things start to decay. So today isn't about this seminar isn't about quick fixes. What I really want to do is talk about and share with you my experience of some of the things that have made a real difference. And I still think about these things. Like I say, I'm constantly learning still. Every single day, I learn something, and I try and just get it better next time around. And everybody brings themselves to work every day. And so with that, you get different characteristics, different personalities. And so we've got to kind of work all this out. But in the main, we've got to be clear that we need strong foundations. I think we can all agree on that, because real thriving doesn't happen by accident. It's built intentionally, faithfully over time. So the core tension is often this. It's often that it's seen as it's that ministry versus business tension. We're all in both. And that's sometimes uncomfortable. Often ministries lean too far in one of these directions, either ignoring either can lead to problems. And so the goal, it's easier maybe to think of it, that the goal is alignment between these two principles rather than compromise. So if you let me just scroll down one page. So maybe a helpful way to reframe this and to bring those two principles into a more easier to understand framework is that the mission is the destination, publishing is the vehicle that we have to use to achieve our mission, and business is the engine that we have to run by, because that's kind of the function that we understand and that we can use. And very much a weak engine will limit how far the mission can go. So it's always keeping in mind that we're on a mission. That's the Great Commission, and we keep that at the top and at the heart of what we do. And that's why we prayerfully go about everything we do, because we could have the vehicle and the engine, but if it's not what the Lord intends, then we will we'll go fast and furious and fail miserably, just trying very, very hard. So it's keeping that mission, that destination in sight as we go along. So one just couple of things throughout this, and I'm going to drop in a few things that little takeaways that I've inserted that just things that, as I've been preparing this, have felt important to me to emphasize. So one of the ones at this stage I would just mention is that what's unseen eventually shapes outcomes. So even if you're neglecting a particular area, or you sort of accept a weakness in the process, in your engine, in your vehicle, in your machine, eventually that will steer the ship. You won't get to where you want to go if you're just hoping that the weak areas, the shaky foundations just don't matter. That will unfortunately come through. That'll peek out the top of everything. So the 5 foundations I just want to talk through, and like I say, this is a 45-minute talk. I'm not trying to cover everything always about foundations. You might have other ideas, and please, like Heather said, drop questions into the chat. Very happy to field any and all questions. But these are just 5 foundations for us to consider today, as we look at this opportunity, if you like. Foundation 1 is mission and audience. So Brené Brown, you might have heard this before: clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And so we've got to think about why do we exist? Who are we? What are we trying to do in our particular ministries? Who are we called to serve? And often we want to sort of be all things to all people. We want to really maximize and have a very broad definition. And that can be very unclear. It can be unclear to all the stakeholders. It can be unclear to the people on your team. It can be unclear to funders. It can be unclear to your customers. It can be unclear to yourself even. And in a sense, that's unkind, because the bar it's too hard to succeed. As with all things, the more you can define what success looks like, then the easier it is for people to know when they've got there. And so, knowing for our own sake that we're spending money and time in the right places, we need to be sharp as to why do we exist? What is our mission? What is our audience? And that idea that focus leads to depth. You're not limiting things by saying we want to be really clear as to what we're doing, what we're not doing. One thing I do quite often, and I ask my teams to do this when we're preparing our budgets, is as much to think about what they will do. So as well as thinking about what they will do, I want also to see a list of what they won't do. And that's very freeing, because it allows them to not worry about stuff they've put in the "I'm not going to do this" list, or put it off to a later phase. And it allows them then to focus. So if anybody ever comes to them and says, "What about X, Y, or Z?" they can say, "Oh no, I've considered that. Yeah, and that is on our future plans." And it just allows a little bit of clarity and focus to be in the thing. So just as a question I just put out there, not for people to answer now, but just to think about throughout the seminar, is who is your ministry for, and why does it exist? And can you articulate that in one sentence without vague language and without using the word everyone? So that's just food for thought. Foundation 2, sustainable publishing strategy. So many ministries confuse activity with faithfulness. Publishing publishing more is not the same as publishing wisely. At SPCK, we often use the expression that we prefer more hits and fewer misses. So because obviously when you're publishing books, it's very hard to get it right. I mean, you won't get it right all the time, but what you are trying to do is just every time you learn something or you move forward, you're trying to have more hits and fewer misses, which is just quite a helpful sharpening sharpening tool, if you like, to think about how you improve every step of the way. Sustainability asks different questions. So, what can we realistically maintain? What rhythms protect quality and people? And what formats actually serve our audience? So, consistency beats volume every single time. A slow, steady publishing rhythm outlives frantic bursts of output. And if your strategy depends on exhaustion, urgency, heroics, or unreliable third parties, it won't last. And one particular, I just want to particularly emphasize that last thing on the list there, unreliable third parties. I'm talking to you about things I've learned along the way. And often, I don't know whether it's obviously my experiences within publishing. I can't speak for other industries, but I'm surprised at how often in publishing we rely on third parties because they're experts in X, Y, or Z, and we need them. We need them either before publishing or after publishing. We need them somewhere in the journey from left to right. And obviously, I'm not going to name any names or anything, but when those third parties approach you, they approach you with a very convincing sales pitch, if you like, or a proposal for how they can support you and assist you, and that's great. That's normal. You'd expect that. Um, However, I think wisdom is required at this stage because good third parties can be the best thing you've ever done. Um, Third parties that don't perform how you believed they were going to perform when you signed them up can be a daily, not just a daily grind, but they can really impact your ability to fulfill your mission. And ultimately, your customer looks to you. They don't know about the third parties, and you don't really want to have to talk to them about third parties because that's just passing the buck. So I would recommend that a third party who you take into your ecosystem should be able to withstand your interrogation before you sign them up. If they if they're uncomfortable with questions, if they're uncomfortable taking for you to take time, if they're uncomfortable with you being really wise and intentional about this, then I would question whether they're the best partner. So I would be wise when it comes to third parties you partner with. Foundation three. Foundation three, financial stewardship and sustainability. So um, a financially fragile ministry is not a more spiritual one. Um, what I would just say as a second part of that is that prayer is such an important aspect of everything within what we do, because that permanent dependence on God to provide is the Christian's privilege. It is something I experienced very early on in my career working for Alpha International. They had ambitions that were huge ambitions to take the gospel to all parts of the world and to be very much part of evangelizing the nations, transforming society, and very honorably with that. But obviously, finance is a big player. You can't ignore that. But they always impress me how they approached that very prayerfully, because they were in this constant need of like dependence on God to provide for what on in human terms was an impossible mission. And so I've carried that always along the journey. So it's given me a particular, I think, outlook on money. That we need to obviously be good stewards, and but again, these things are intentional a little bit. So we don't want to be so fragile financially that is hard to contain any sort of sustainability. We can't keep people on the team, or we can't move ahead with our ambitions, our goals, our mission. But at the same time, we're not here. This isn't the reason we're in this part of what we do, is because we're not. This isn't the banking world. That's not kind of why we're here. So it's that tension, and but in the middle of all of that, stability enables impact, revenue supports the mission, and stewardship protects people and quality. So sustainability allows you to pay people fairly, and invest in quality and respond to opportunity instead of crises. No one really wants to be lunging from one crisis to another, and that becomes what your mission is. So you set out on a mission that you believe God gave you, but it has become crisis management on a weekly, monthly basis. So the goal isn't wealth, the goal is stability, wisdom, and reinvestment for greater impact. On foundation foundation four foundation four systems and structure. So passion starts ministries, systems sustain them. So everything that we do, we need to have obviously the passion to begin it, but we need clear systems to sustain them. So at SPCK, again, we could have the greatest ambitions for our books and our authors to reach different markets. And I mentioned before about the library market. And yes, I can go and work out how I think we should move into the library market, is just one example. But that's all well and good, because I need to make sure that once that we've agreed that's what we're going to do, we're going to put resource behind that. There needs to be very clear workflows so that everybody knows the role that they play in making sure that stuff happens on a daily basis. Because without that, there won't be consistency, there won't be accountability for anything, and it won't thrive, it won't happen. So what we thought would happen, we'll just reflect on in a year or two's time and reflect that it didn't happen. So structure doesn't restrict God's spirit moving around our work. It creates space for people to thrive without burnout. And this, for me, in terms of all the areas I work in and all the areas I enjoy the most, this is the heart of it for me. This takeaway here, where I say great people matter a lot, acknowledging great people's work matters as much. So I attribute anything I've achieved over certainly this role and in previous roles, almost entirely to the team I've worked with. Because having great people has made everything possible. And so part of, I think, leadership is making sure early on that you're pretty sure that the people working for you, working with you, people you will count on to help you, and you're all travelers together. This isn't a top-down structure. In fact, I really don't like the idea of a top-down structure. I'd much rather have a much more flat structure, and make sure that those people who are with me on this journey know that only they can do what they do. They're so valued, and that's not fake. That's genuine, because I want them to bring everything they have to the party. If they're creative, then I want them to be able to be creative. If they enjoy processes, I want them to be able to enjoy processes. So looking for everybody's strength and allowing them to bring that into their day-to-day work. With from that, you get a remarkable thing, because what I see is, as a result of that, people don't want to leave, or at least they're not telling me they want to leave. Um, they also enjoy their work on a daily basis, which is so important, because they shouldn't be miserable in their work. But also the impact in terms of going back to systems and structure, what they were there to deliver is delivered and then some. So they don't just bring their basic um, energy levels to a particular opportunity. They bring it with you know they bring it with gusto. They bring it with energy and enthusiasm, and it's almost a case of, okay, guys, let's be realistic. Let's make sure what we want to do is still achievable, because we don't want anybody to be disappointed. We want to be clear what success looks like. So for me, the people piece remains, and always has been, and I hope always will be, the number one piece to all these foundations, because everything else, I think, crumbles without great people working with you. The other little piece just to add at this point is just useful for us, again, just to consider as you think about these things, is what breaks if one key leader steps away. Um, and so, going back to the previous slide about systems and processes, strong systems do build resilience into the organization. It cannot be and should not be that it's heavily dependent or overly dependent on one person who knows everything. There'll always be the people who are brilliant and know more in their areas, and that they might go and have a new opportunity before them, whatever. But the system needs to be strong enough so that you don't slump back down or lose a year of you've built something up and suddenly someone leaves and you're back a year in the past. So it's well worth thinking about: are your systems, your processes resilient? Or is there enough process documentation going on so that if someone steps away, there's a clear process flow? They're handing over their job well. It doesn't just rely on them being in the room. And also, that structure then creates breathing room within the system. So a good structure means that things are working away in the background, and it allows people to breathe because they're not always feeling the pressure to keep up with everything in case someone leaves. The fifth foundation I wanted to just talk about a little bit today is the whole area of leadership, integrity, and culture. So often, every organization has these things. They need these things. They'll be measured on these things, and the success will be based on these things. So at the end of the day, culture flows from within the organization. There are different. It's a really interesting area because culture has become very much a word that forward-thinking organizations are very much now engaging with. So HR is a very essential function of any organization, but this is more about what is the culture that's being set from within the organization, because some people will be setting the culture, either, and it'll be happening either intentionally or it'll be happening unintentionally, but it will be happening. So that will then define how decisions are made. It'll define how people are treated. It'll define how pressure is handled. Are people blamed for things, or is that just that whole area of culture will be being formed, even if you intend it or not. So growth magnifies what this the integrity isn't optional; it's foundational. Um, and when you grow, it'll magnify what already exists. So if what exists is good, then when you grow, it'll be more obvious that you had a great, very strong core. If at the core there are problems and issues, then as growth happens, it'll become all those things will become all the more obvious. So thriving ministries lead for endurance, not urgency, for trust, not speed, and for faithfulness over just a flash moment. And obviously, with this subject, um, they talk about you know trust coming in on foot and going out on a horseback. Credibility once lost is very hard to regain. So this is a very important area for us to think about. Culture, I would recommend be very proactive about what the culture is of your organization and what you want what you want it to be. And then just a little note about um, measuring what matters. So in all our in all our worlds, numbers are very important. Those are things we think about a lot. Those are things we talk about a lot, and they're not bad. And for different, like I said before, success is different things to different people. So sales matter, but they're not everything. And this is a challenge to me because obviously I was um, when I've been in work environments that are very commercial, where sales kind of are everything, um, and the numbers. There's no point hiding away from them, but they're also not everything, because if I, for example, with our marketing work that we do, um, if I just went for marketing activity where I could say there's a definite return on investment on that dollar spent, I probably wouldn't do any marketing because um, there's that saying that half of marketing works, you're just never sure which half. And so you can't just be, I will only spend a dollar if I see a return on it, because there's other things going on. There's that all I think benefit the whole. So sometimes your foundation building, so you might be investing in something that you may not see the fruit of for a number of years. It might be a market. So I mentioned to you about the library market. I will do quite a lot of work on the library market without seeing a single amount of return. Another thing that I've been doing over the last couple of years is, as I've looked at our global markets, been doing a lot of work on international territories where we've had an element of activity in the past, but there's a lot more to be had. But that involves working out what's the distribution. So in country X, Y, or Z, do we have distribution there? If not, what does that distribution need to be? What's it need to look like? That involves a lot of work before you even sell your first book in that territory. So it's important to, I think, see things in the whole as to, that sales do matter and numbers do matter, but they're not everything. Um, there are other things that matter. So long-term transformation, culture, raising up the next generation. We have an internship at SPCK Group, and that's really important for all kinds of reasons. That's really important because if we don't give the next generation opportunity, then we failed somewhere along the way there. We failed to give opportunity to the next generation on a very basic level, but also we failed to see that they bring a lot of learning to us, a lot of insight. They help us stay sharp. So that there's that. That's not a numbers game. And then there's a contribution to society. We're very fortunate at SPCK that our authors are often asked to be on panels and different things, and different talk shows to give sort of a church, not a response, but just a faith-based response to a particular question. And we want to create conversations between Christianity and culture. That's what we do. I cannot measure that in numbers. That's not what that's about. That's our mission, our vision is to create conversation between Christianity and culture. But there's an engine and a machine in there that allows that to happen, which is publishing. But I can't just wholesale measure that on sales. So metrics again are very important. It's we need these metrics because they inform us. So your sales reports, they inform decisions, they allow refinement, but they should never replace discernment. And this comes back to what I was saying before about, we've got to remain prayerful, we've got to remain very clear about what our vision is, because we shouldn't just throw everything out because and there may be other reasons that metrics aren't they're they won't give you intelligence necessarily behind what's happening. There's another story. So if a particular you've had a particularly difficult trading time or whatever, it might be because there's an actual reason. The metrics won't tell you that, so you need to be able to discern what's the bigger picture. So another aspect just to mention to you is to discuss is survival, going from survival to strength. So think about in terms of these foundations. These foundations allow us to build longevity into our work, into our mission, and small improvements compound. So we are, I'm always one of those people that wants to achieve everything today. If I have an idea of how I want to move something forward, I kind of like it done by this evening if I could have my own way, which is not a good. That's not. I told you I was just a person who's working it out. That's not my best quality. But I do appreciate that small improvements, even if I make an improvement today, or improvement is made in our systems, our processes, that'll compound over time. If we learn something today, that'll compound over time. So we shouldn't be too tough on ourselves that we're not achieving everything today. And just one note to say, again, this is probably one of my top tips, if I've learned anything along the way, is particularly in Christian mission in our world, it's very tempting, isn't it, to sort of an idea comes in from someone or a thought, an inspiration, whatever, it just comes from a different, and we go after that. We chase that. That's a great idea. We love that. We'll go after that. And suddenly attention is diverted over here and people start looking over here or they start looking over there. And again, that's not to discount or discredit those ideas. But going back to what I was saying before about the to do and to not do list, the danger about chasing every idea is not the chasing the idea per se. It's that what might be happening while we're off chasing the new idea is that the core of what we do just cools down ever so gradually, a little bit every day, every week, every month. And that could be processes, it could be disciplines, it could be things that where once someone was looking at, now no one's looking at, and then it starts to be a little bit tricky in that space. So it's keeping hot at the core. So in my world, what that looks like is an example might be your top selling titles. If you have top selling titles, those top selling titles will do the heavy lifting of your sales for you over a year. So make sure they're working hard for you. You get good stock levels, the channels know how to order them, that everything's just really kept totally okay with those. Because if that's neglected, then really what you're saying to the slower selling titles in my case would be, I need you to do double the amount of work you do normally title, because you're trying to make up for other big titles that are out of stock or the channels don't know how to order or whatever. So whatever your core mission is, whatever your core, going back to that sort of engine analogy, keep that really hot because that will enable everything. If you've got a product or a service or a business that there is demand for, and that's tried and tested and it's got you this far. Keep that bit hot. And that mightn't be terribly exciting. You might not, it might be a bit processing, a bit mundane to keep that hot because you're kind of used to it. But that's the bit that will allow you to do the other things and be creative and expand, but do it in sort of the wisdom that the core of your operation, your organization needs to stay hot. I've seen organizations chase new ambitions and dreams, and uh, you often hear that they've folded because they lost the essential thing, which was keeping themselves hot at the core. Um, so, and I've mentioned before about just caution as well with convincing pitches from potential partners, and another area, and it's a delicate one, but it's useful just saying it here because we've all seen the problems with power and hubris and everything like that, and we are all human and no one's immune from the dizziness of success and the dangers of success. And, um, that can lead to incorrect decisions being made because there's, power at play. There's the idea of building something, and that can be quite intoxicating. So just a mechanism to keep that in check is good, even if that's decision making is across a number of people. Everybody has the ability to disagree. Is it can be very healthy just to stop anything running away with itself. So the final challenge before I just wrap up my section, and then I really want to encourage questions, is and it's just a challenge. It's a challenge to me as much as a challenge to anyone else. Is what one foundation can I strengthen this quarter? I can't fix everything, and that's just frustrating if I try to, because this isn't about me. This isn't about what I bring to the party. Everybody gets to play. And in actual fact, everybody's strengths and everybody's weaknesses are all part of the picture. This isn't just about me and my strengths. This is about everybody getting to play. So what can we build intentionally over this next month, over this next quarter, and constantly remembering that what is built well endures. And that's what we want. We don't want our mission, we don't want our organization to start strong because there was a very clear mission. But we just, for one reason or another, and it could have been a good reason, but for one reason or another, we just didn't give the time, attention needed to putting these foundations in place. And so the thing never kind of had a chance. And there is no better time than now to look at these things. There is no better time than now to reassess, are my foundations going to enable the mission to be here in 5, 10, 15 years and as a legacy to our children and our children's children? There's no better time than now to think about these things. So my time is up, and thank you so much for giving me your attention. Like I said, I'm working it out. I don't claim to be an expert in these things, and I'd be really interested to hear and help if I can answer any questions if anybody has any. I'll stop sharing my screen. And
thank you, Rowan. I appreciate what you've shared. It's been excellent. And I think as soon as you stop sharing your screen here, we'll be able to see the two of us. We've already got some questions coming in. Oh, let me turn my camera on so we have that. Got several good questions coming in. Here's a question from Susan. She says, thanks for this wise and helpful advice. Very inspiring. Could you talk more about metrics? In particular, Is there really a way to measure spiritual fruit and long-term transformation as a result of our books?
Mm. So that's a really good question. Thank you for answering that. So I take a lot of heart and comfort from. So recently, there's been a lot of press about Bible sales. I don't know if anybody's seen that. If you haven't seen that, please email me. I know that Heather's team are putting my email in the chat if they haven't already. If you want a summary of all of the press around the world about the spiritual hunger for Bibles, then please get me to send you them. I was in New York last week talking to our partners out there, and my opening comment was, "I don't know what's happening here, but look." Okay, and I was sharing press from the UK, press from all over Europe, press from South America, press from countries, that I in my wildest dreams wouldn't have thought would be interested in Bibles. So to answer that question, for me, if I've if what we have done in any way has played a small part in getting that interest, if young people are finding Christ through our work, if people are finding help for the situations they find themselves in life, and this press would certainly be one metric that I would look at to say, well, that's if I can quite easily connect the dots on that. So metrics can be different things. They can be 20 PR pieces from mainstream press outlets. That's a metric. Um, but I wouldn't want ever to think that this was just a day job. It's too hard work to be something that doesn't produce fruit. It's not just about. It's actually not about book publishing. That's not our mission. Our mission is to create conversations between Christianity and culture. And if book publishing is part of that, then great. So it's just having and obviously then there are metrics that we look at as well.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Rowan. Another question here. Without naming any companies, what are some of the general areas that SPCK uses third parties for? Like, for example, editing, marketing, layout design, distribution, etc.
Yeah, a lot. The because we're quite a small organization, and the more we grow and develop, the more partners we need. And that can be in all these areas that you've listed in the question, and many more besides, because I have only 24 hours in my day and I don't really want to spend all of them working. And nor does it anybody else. And so, also in different time zones as well. So I expansion and growth will absolutely need partners. And so, to answer your question, all areas, third parties are everywhere. I almost just have to slightly move to my right or to my left, and I'm talking with a third party who we have, we're working with.
So
So yeah.
in your presentation, you were talking about um, third parties that aren't really pulling their weight. So you aren't advocating for not using third parties. You're just advocating, if I understood correctly, to ensure that those third parties that you're working with are really on
Hmm.
your team and really providing something valuable to you. Is
I
that
think
correct?
so. That's exactly right, Heather. So
Mm,
the mission that we've set out, we're undertaking, relies on something being delivered, a service, a product, whatever. And so if someone wants to be part of you delivering that, then it's essential that that is a help and rather than a hindrance.
mm,
So I'm certainly not saying don't use third parties. In fact, quite the opposite. You need third parties. Otherwise, you cannot scale. You can't
mm,
scale on your own unless you just add more and more people. But that's often not sustainable or affordable. So you
mm.
need to find, and also, I wouldn't have the expertise in that area or in that territory or in that channel. So I need experts who have expertise in those areas, those countries, those channels. But I need to know I can 100% depend on them because uh, they hold my business reputation, if you want to put it like that. You know, they hold that in their hands. They hold our success and our ability to fulfill our mission in that channel, in that country, in that area of expertise in their hands.
Great. Another question. Under Foundation 5, Rowan mentioned three things: endurance, not speed, trust, and not uh somebody's asking, can anyone remember what the rest of those were?
Let me tell you. Let me go back in my notes. Foundation five. Sorry, it might not have been Foundation five. Uh, I need to just remind myself. I will definitely do that. I'll pop it into the chat if I
Okay,
remind
great.
myself.
We do have Rowan's email address in the chat, so you can find that there if you're looking for it. And he is welcoming you to email him with any additional questions. We have another one from our Q&A panel. This is from Dan. He's saying the sticking point in my one-person publishing operation is getting noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Printed books sell wherever I go to speak. Print and ebooks are all available on Amazon, but the people I serve, pastors and chaplains, have to know how to find my books. Is there
Mm,
one strategic place to spend my money to inform my audience of my product and what can it do for them?
mm. I mean, in a sense, that's the holy grail, isn't it, of publishing? If there were maybe a magic answer to that, I guess everybody would be doing it. Um, and you know, there is an element to which every going back to what I was saying before about every little thing matters, which is good, and it can also be annoying because you don't want it to be that you need to work so hard to sell a book. But you know, the things I would just mention, um, just and there's no absolute total answer here, but metadata is a very important component of book retelling today. If you're if you are not all over metadata, then please find out about metadata. Please ask me about metadata. Metadata is the I said humans and my colleagues will always be my number one. And that's what I said in the presentation, and that's how I work every day. If without my team, I'm finished. Number two is metadata and inventory. Without those two things, I can't do anything. Inventory is the obvious one because you can see it. Metadata it's the invisible stuff, and without metadata, discoverability is out the window. So really, this is the. I don't think there's a way to not engage with that. So probably that would be my number one answer to that question is what's your position on metadata? What are you doing about it? Where are you on a level of 0 to 100? We really got to grips with this year. Got to grips with metadata this year, and we have a superb metadata expert in house who actually won a metadata award this year because she
Wow.
took us on, and it's transformational because the global markets need it, and without it, you're all but invisible, unfortunately, in modern
Um,
publishing.
if you could describe what you mean by metadata and just
Mhm.
briefly, are we just talking about keywords or
Mhm.
what do you mean by that? What comprises that?
Yeah, sure. So, and it may well be that it may well be Heather and team in due course. There's an opportunity to have a
Mm,
seminar. I don't know because
yeah.
we do have expertise in house that can talk about this stuff. I just know what happens, and I know they're very, very good at it. And it is
Mhm.
all this stuff. It is keywords. It's also to do with how systems talk to each other.
Mhm.
Onyx, you'll have heard of the word onyx, and it's very important that everything's connecting. And it's amazing how things can fall if they're not connecting. So it's really an understanding of the technical side of it, but also then the flow of it, because you can't have one without the other. Um, and just for definition's sake, and I've just pulled this up, so I'm reading it rather than, and you can read this too, is metadata in publishing refers to the structured information that describes a book or publication, including key details as title, author, pub dates and stuff, which enhance discoverability and categorization.
Oh,
But like I say, it is also about how that, because you can have the best metadata in the world, but unless it's getting out to all the right places, so it's the pipeline too.
okay, great. Um, Another question here that's come in from Jason. Do you have any advice for personal publishing on Substack or similar platforms?
Mm, yeah. Um, so um, personal publishing, I would need to understand a little bit more what's meant by that. But obviously, in terms of brand awareness, it's really important to be all over these things. Um, it creates a conversation, it's engaging people, it's building brand. So all your Substack, your Meta ads, your Amazon A plus content, all of this matters. And there are lots of tools out there nowadays to help and support with this. So, which again goes back to the third party point. But there are lots of good ones that are helping organizations like us um, have better discoverability. So I'll give you an example. We now supply our authors with what's called a biblet, and a biblet is it's not our it's a tool we've paid to use. Essentially, it's a little tool where when the author sends if an author sends that out to their fan base, it allows for people to sort of see a little snippet of the book, also maybe a little interview with the author and someone. It gives a lovely little summary to not just the book but the world around the book, and that's working really really well. So there's not one magic bullet, but I would say all these things are really important, and our guys in our marketing team are all over our socials all the time. It's very important to what we do, but all because audience building, going back to maybe this is part of it as well, is you've got an audience, you want that audience to stay and grow. If
Mm,
an audience if one of your audience members has a bad experience, um then they're likely to go elsewhere. If they have a good experience, then they'll stay. And but also then you give the confidence to, you go to a conference and there's a sign up opportunity, people sign up and you grow your audience, and then there's an opportunity then for you can grow your audience confident that your mechanism works, and that you're not going to just get them once and then lose them, get them once and then
mm,
lose them.
great. One of the questions that came in advance, what role do strong church partnerships play in the
Mm,
foundations of a publishing ministry?
yeah, an excellent question. So church partnerships are really important, because going back to what I was saying about audience building, a lot of our audience are churchgoers. So if I neglect church partnerships, I'm neglecting a large part of our audience. We are Our particular organization sort of got a large foot in the church market, but also we're hungry to go outside the church market as well, because going back to our mission about creating conversations between Christianity and culture, we have to have an interest in both. And also, I want to, in terms of new audiences, new markets, I don't want to just keep very tidy in the church market and get very comfortable there. I actually want my books and our Bibles and to be picked up and read by people who don't yet go to church, ideally, because that's my great commission. That's my is to take this stuff beyond the doors and beyond where it's very familiar, very comfortable. And also, you know how I can't quite necessarily define who, I don't want to limit the potential for our books to find markets. So church partnerships are very important. probably as part of that, keeping the core hot piece.
Hmm.
But please don't be limited by that in terms of your mission and your vision for what you could achieve.
And one final question here from Gethuku. What are the most defining and unconventional decisions that SPCK has made over the years to stay profitable?
Unconventional. Yeah. That's a really good question. Unconventional. I mean, you know, I suppose not being afraid to kind of just do the legwork, so like take for example, we changed our US distribution a few years ago, and that there was no quick fix to doing that. That wasn't so unconventional. Might have been the fact that you know um, we drove around a good chunk of North America in a car, going and visiting some places, and just sort of seeing ourselves the options there. So, that isn't terribly conventional because that took up a lot of time. You're on the road a lot. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to that is it's not so much it's unconventional, it's just not being nothing's beneath me. I'm very happy to jump in a car and go do what's needed. So I would say just stay connected to what you need to do and don't underestimate you know whether you're in a board meeting or in a car driving around seeing warehouses. Everything matters. None of it's all unconventional. None of it's unconventional at the same time. That would be my answer in a roundabout way.
Great. Thank you, Rowan. Um, we're glad for what you shared with us. I think we're ready to start our closing slides. So, Mia, if you could get those fired up. This webinar has been recorded. All registered participants will receive a link to the recording today, and it will soon be posted on the MAI YouTube channel, which is at MAI Lit World, if you're wanting to look at it. We want to know how we can serve you better through our webinars. There's a QR code on your screen and a link in the chat panel where you can go to take a very short survey. Make sure you look out for our next webinar in English, scheduled for March 17th at 1 p.m. UTC time. It's entitled Keys to Financially Sustainable Christian Publishing. It's being presented by Stefan Kapitanuk, the CEO of BLF Edition in France. MAI regularly offers training in writing, editing, and publishing both online and in person. We encourage you to go to maiglobal.org to find out more and to discover more resources and information. Thank you to all of you who joined and participated with us. I'm Heather Pubels, your host, along with Mia Toganon, our technical assistant. The QR code for the survey will be going back up very soon so that you can provide us with feedback before you sign off. The survey should only take you a minute and your input is valuable. Until next time, keep writing, everyone. Thanks for joining us.